Hey everyone, welcome back to Teen TV Deep Dive. And on this podcast, we talk about all things teen TV. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about a show with a queer lead. I thought that would be a fun way to celebrate Pride. So today we're going to be talking about Overcompensating. So the premise of the show is basically the lead character Benny is going to college. He had previously was like Mr. Perfect, the golden boy in high school, and he expects to continue that same reputation as he goes to college. It's a college called Yates, I believe. It's pretty like affluent and just a fancy school. But after all, being like the captain of the football team, having good grades and things like that, coming from a perfect family, Benny has a secret. And the secret is that he's gay, but he wants to keep himself in the closet and he doesn't really want to admit to those feelings that he's been having. But over the course of the show, he starts to realize that he can't really hide it anymore. So, like I said, Benny is the main character, and so I wanted to get more into his character development and just the character traits that we see from him in this first season. Of course, like I said, Benny is a perfectionist. He really wants to just meet every mark. I think part of it is because he's closeted. He just doesn't want anyone to feel suspicious of him. So he's had girlfriends. He joins a fraternity, hangs around all those like typical gym bros and stuff like that. And you see that Benny works really hard to just try and not make anyone suspicious of him. Like there's a queer alliance club at their college, and he barely even wanted to make eye contact with the people in that club because he didn't want anyone to be suspicious of him. And I also think that Benny's like perfectionist tendencies do stem from the high expectations that his father has placed on him. We see in the episode where Benny goes to visit his family for Thanksgiving break that his dad is kind of like on him about making sure that he's an econ major because that's what his dad felt like was the perfect major for him and just gonna get him the perfect job. He checks in and makes like comments because Benny chose not to play football in college. He lied and said that he plays for the rowing team at the school, and his dad still made fun of him for that. His dad also checked in on his sister Grace and made sure that she was still doing well in her relationship. But you just see that Benny's dad has a lot of high expectations for his kids, and I think that's why Benny puts so much pressure on himself to not draw any attention to himself. And I also think that just makes Benny like obsessed with self-image. You'll see that Benny will lie sometimes and say that he is such a ladies' man when, of course, in reality, we know he's not. Just because he wants to seem cool, he wants to seem like one of the guys. He doesn't want like a whole lot of attention to be on him. He just wants to fit in, and that's really his main point of the show and just like his what he's focused on for the most part. And over the course of the show, we see that Benny meets this guy. His name is Miles. First, he kind of sees him around campus constantly, and Benny is like interested in him. But then they actually end up, well, actually, no. Benny sees Miles go to another class, and so then Benny then drops one of the most important classes for his major to go join this film class to be around this guy named Miles. They end up hitting it off and they have a pretty good friendship as well. But just over the time as they hang out, and it's just kind of like playful touches and matching costumes for Halloween. Benny is kind of conflicted because he doesn't know if Miles is like doing these things because he thinks they're really good friends or if he's doing this because he likes Benny in a romantic way. And you see Benny has like a lot of dreams and just like moments of quite literally overcompensating what Miles is doing for him, doing with him, as in like their declarations of love are just a way to show that Miles is way more interested than what he actually is. I think that the crush on Miles, because he ends up being like with the girl, so Benny is really hurt by that. But I don't think Honestly, I don't think Miles is straight, in my opinion. Like, I think everything that's happened over the course of the season has happened for a reason, is very intentional. But just because he had one girlfriend, like one night with the girl, I don't feel like we should completely write him off as to be like not interested in Benny just yet. So I'm a little bit hopeful for that. I also love how Benny was a barb. He tries to have like this little hangout kickback sesh at his dorm, and so he invited like a bunch of the popular guys over to hang out, and they were all listening to music, and all the rest of them wanted to listen to like quote unquote guy rap. And Benny asked if they could put on Nicki Minaj, and he literally sang it word for word. And that was one of the more memorable moments of this series to me. And it was one of the moments that I had laughed out loud at. So I really enjoyed that. I wanted to mention that. Moving on to the next character, we're going to talk about Carmen. Carmen ends up being really good friends with Benny, but she has a little bit of a different background in comparison to Benny. She's pretty estranged with her parents. They aren't very involved in her life. And she also had an older brother that passed. And so Carmen just really doesn't have anyone in her life that she's connecting with. So when she goes to college, I feel like she's a little bit desperate for a connection, and she just doesn't know how to be a friend. There's been a couple of times where Carmen has mentioned like, oh, all of my friends that I had were my brother's friends, and after he passed, they weren't around anymore. And so I feel like her and Benny do things to not intentionally to each other, but they do things that end up hurting the other person's feelings. So I feel like they're almost just kind of made for each other, not in a mean way, but just in a no one is gonna understand and allow to put up with all the garbage that they put people through, except for each other. I also wanted to talk about a little situation that happened in the first half of the season, and it's where Carmen ends up hooking up with this guy named Peter. Peter is in a relationship with another girl. We'll talk about this later on, but when they're kind of like sneaking around, they end up finding out that they have a lot more in common than what made me the eye, because Carmen is not popular at all. She wasn't really popular in high school and still not the coolest in college. But then we see that Peter is kind of like the talk of the town, and he's leading this super elite secret society in their school. So it's kind of like contrast in he's popular, she's not. But then when they kind of get to know each other a little bit better, they do realize that they have some things in common. Like they both like to play the same video game. Both of them kind of feel like the odd man out, even though Peter has been able to fit in the social scene a little bit better than Carmen has. He still doesn't come from a whole lot of money, and it's very similar to the situation that Carmen is in. But I think overall, Carmen's growth and lesson that she needed to learn this season is how to be a good friend. I think that storyline should still continue in season 2, because while she's admitted a lot of the wrongs that she's made to other people in the show as she tries to make friends and try and fit in, she's still not a good friend at all. But she's doing better. Next, I wanted to talk about Grace. Grace is Benny's older sister. At first, when Benny decided to go to Yates, she wasn't proud of that. She didn't want him to go to the same college as her, but she's kind of accepted it now. And something that I want to know more about is Grace's past self. So there's this one girl, she's kind of like emo or weird or whatever, and Grace's boyfriend Peter always makes fun of her and doesn't want Grace to hang around her. And what Grace presents on the outside is she's very like put together, well spoken, almost like a trophy girlfriend almost, in her relationship with Peter. And so for her to be friends with someone like this, it kind of makes me think back to what was she like before her relationship with Peter. And then even when they went to go visit their home, when they left for Thanksgiving break, Grace's room was looked like the inside of a Hot Topic. And I just really want to know more about what she was like before. And I don't know if it's her relationship with Peter or just trying to reinvent herself in college or what. But I just really want to know why Grace made the changes that she's made. And again, like I said, the girl Mimi, she does kind of seem like she had an important part of Grace's life before the show started. And so we see that it's Halloween weekend again. This is another important event in the show. um, where Grace decided not to dress up as Daisy and Gatsby with her boyfriend Peter, but she instead decided to dress up as, I can't remember the name, but it's one of the people from like the Cullen family in Twilight. And she goes and she knocks at Mimi's door, and Mimi isn't dressed up, and she has a partner now. And so Grace is kind of feeling dumb, and she's just staring there. I just wanted to know more about this connection in the show, I guess, and why it's so important to Grace when it kind of feels like nothing is of importance to her. Again, like Grace being a trophy wife, not a trophy wife, but like a trophy girlfriend, and she's just kind of there in her relationship with Peter to kind of sit there and look pretty and be on his arm. I just don't think it's a good relationship for her at all. We see that Peter doesn't take any interest in her interests or just her endeavors that happen on the show. She gets the opportunity to be a liaison for Charlie XCX when she comes to their college. And even though she's brought it up to Peter a million times, he just still seems like he doesn't care. But I think Peter leans on Grace a lot for a lot of emotional support and just affirmation and validation, and I don't think he gives her the same in return. So I don't think that relationship is healthy for Grace. I think she should leave it. But I was happy for her by the end of the season when she finally broke things off with Peter and seeing how bad he was for her. Next, we've been talking about him quite a bit for the past couple of episodes. For the past couple of characters. And so we're going to be talking about Peter next. He's just bad. Like, he doesn't, he's a senior in college and he doesn't have any job opportunities lined up. He's basically just so obsessed with being the leader of all these like misogynistic boys and this secret society or slash fraternity or whatever. It just doesn't seem like he has much depth to him, except for when he and Carmen had that thing that they had going on, where he did kind of open up to her about his family situation and his background, and still being very sweet to her, oddly, even though you didn't see this side of him around everyone else. But then once the initial, like, I guess, butterflies wore off with Carmen, and she did some things that he didn't like, he was immediately back to being a bad person. I expected there to be some layers, like, okay, on the outside, you don't expect there to be much from him. But then as you get closer to Peter and get to know him more, I was expecting to see a little bit more layers and more substance, but he's just a bad person. And I'm not excited to see him in season 2 if he has a presence there, but I do like how of a good job that his actor Adam DeMarco did for him. I think he portrayed the character really well, and so shout out to him, but I don't like Peter as the character. I'm sorry. Lastly, I wanted to talk about Haley. She wasn't a character that was super involved in drama, but she is Carmen's roommate, and she's pretty out there, kind of quirky, says whatever is on her mind, but I really like that about her. And I feel like, oddly enough, you wouldn't expect with how quirky she is, or sometimes how rough she can come off, but I feel like she's a voice of reason in this show. I don't think she does anything that's too extreme or too bad, and I think she stays true to herself, which is a quality that I love to see in characters on TV. As well as she was super confident in herself, I think that's a thing that all of the other characters are missing, is just some confidence in themselves. I think that's what causes so many problems in this show, is because people act irrationally out of insecurity. I think if everybody took a lesson from Haley, things would be a lot less chaotic than what they are. And just, I love Haley's little one-liners that she had every so often in the show. She was a one-liner queen. And of course, she was my favorite character. So, after taking some time to talk about all of the characters and the struggles that they go through this season, I thought I could just say some other things that I liked about the show as well. I really liked the soundtrack of the show. It was amazing. It had a lot of songs by Charlie XCX and Lord, which I thought was cool. But I think Prime Video just always does a really good job with the soundtracks in their shows. And it's actually music that I listen to at least. So I enjoyed that a lot. Something else that I enjoyed is the show being set in college. I think that with college, um, you don't see as many shows, or at least now we're starting to see more shows about students in college. But before that wasn't something that we've seen a lot. And I think with having a show set in college, there are still a lot of universal truths and lessons that can be learned in the show. But I also think just by small changes in the setting, like the location of the college, and also just the main character's interest and personality can personalize the college experience so much. And I think it makes it really interesting to watch, because I feel like with high school TV shows, it can be kind of tropey and um, just limited to the things that you can do. But I feel like with a college show, it's just a lot more freedom to let the characters grow. So, yeah. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you could drop down in the comments who your favorite character from Overcompensating was, that would be great. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.